Okay, so look, Queensland's tourism sector has now fallen victim to its own government's idiotic policies, which has resulted in months of uncertainty and panic-stricken unnecessary border closures, leaving thousands of businesses in ruins. Now, evidently the phrase taking responsibility for your own actions doesn't apply anymore. Welcome to the reality, folks, that when you roller shutter your borders up and down, there are consequences. The fact the Queensland Premier herself now wants the Australian taxpayer to bail her out and rescue her from her silly decisions and actions shows the hide of a rhinoceros. Now, I don't think the Australian taxpayer should be bailing out Queensland for the simple fact that you cannot have your cake and eat it too. I mean, the penny should have dropped well before now to all Australians and the Queensland government that more politics are being played with this pandemic rather than the common sense that should be being used. Closing Queensland's borders to Greater Sydney during the Christmas period is estimated to have cost Queensland around $200 million. And to ask the Australian taxpayer to bail out the state of Queensland for the economic hit from its own border closures is not the answer. Now, let me make it really clear, the small businesses destroyed by the Queensland government deserve sympathy and they deserve support. But that support must come from the government that caused the problem in the first place. The Labor state governments of Queensland, Victoria and Western Australia are using the same playbook. None of these state premiers has even considered that instead of just making a complete across-the-board decision to shut the borders, there is actually value in a state being able to adopt a measured response to outbreaks. Now, it is no way for business to survive or to have the confidence it will be able to survive living under the constant worry of border closures. I mean, what guarantees is the Queensland government giving if people are wanting to go on holiday again to Queensland and the border gets shut yet again if a single case is detected anywhere on either side of the border between New South Wales and Queensland? We are an island, and many state premiers have revelled in the fact that their states have now become islands within the island. Once the international borders closed, Australia was never going to be like the UK or the USA, but now the economic consequences are hitting home. Bailing out Queensland this one time, what happens next time when Palaszczuk decides to shut her doors again?
Hey, Karalee, well, I got to tell you, I agree with you 100%. There is, all right, and you don't hear me say that on this show too often.
No.
Right, but this is the thing. I've got to make this point. Queensland businesses, like every other business around Australia, has had the federal government step in and provide JobKeeper, and that's assisted many, many businesses to stay in touch. It's had JobSeeker to help those who are unemployed or have lost their jobs, right? And so I think that was a pretty reasonable thing to do. But there's no way in the world the federal government should be stepping in to bail out Queensland tourism businesses because of the insane decisions of the Queensland Premier. She made these decisions for political gain, for her own benefits. She masked it up in a whole range of stuff and she lauded herself as a great hero, and now she's suffering the consequences of it. She should be putting her hand in her own pocket and paying out these businesses herself. But of course, they're going broke because they can't manage money. It's hopeless, but the federal government can't defend and step in to prop up hopeless state, Labor or Liberal premiers for that matter.
Look, I hate to be in furious agreement with everyone. Corey, I think when you said that you've never said you 100% agree with everyone, actually you meant me. I think you've agreed with other people in the past.
Yeah, that's true. That's true, Sarah. All right.
We'll talk more about Black Lives Matter another time. No, look, Karalee, I do completely agree with everything that you said. To be devil's advocate a little bit, I do think the past 12 months it's been easy for us to judge and throw aspersions across the premiers. I don't envy any of them. They were all very much feeling their way, and all leaders, state, federal and in fact internationally, have made good decisions and bad decisions. But on this one, I'm not talking through hindsight. I was asked to comment the week before Christmas when we got the wave and obviously northern beaches here in New South Wales, and it was looking really bad in Christmas, and there was this sort of 24-hour window where no one was sure what Queensland was going to do and if it was going to slam the borders shut. To all the people in the southern states who all jump on planes and get in cars and head north every summer, I know because I was going to be one of them. My family and I had flights booked up to Brisbane the first week of January, and obviously we were locked out and we had to cancel those flights. And my heart really went out to all the people who were separated from their family at Christmas. I wasn't one of them. So I said at the time that I thought that Palaszczuk was making a very short-sighted decision, because we all understand the value of the tourism dollar in a state like Queensland, and specifically how much they earn over that 6-week school holiday period. It's really enough to keep most of those tourist operators going all year. And I would have hoped for those small businesses that you've talked about and that we all feel sorry for, that they might have been able to recoup some of the terrible losses of the past year if they'd been allowed to have tourists in there. So I absolutely agree. I think it was a very short-sighted decision from the Queensland Premier. But I think the real question now is, what do we do? You know, you've both taken a pretty hardline stance that it's not the job of the other states to jump in. Obviously, New South Wales has said, look, you made your decision. It's not for us to bail you out now. But Corey, you talk about the Prime Minister's role in this. Can the federal government really afford just to shrug its shoulders? I mean, Premier aside, it's about the voters and the constituents in the state, isn't it?
Yeah, and that's entirely another consideration, and politically, but, you know, upon principle, and that's what I'm trying to apply here, first principles. I think the federal government have been bailing out the states, both blue states and red states, for far too long for their dumb, really, really dumb and dumb decisions and mismanagement, quite frankly.
I mean, they're not really dumb.
Look,
oh, sorry.
They are.
Karalee.
They are dumb.
Well, no,
Yeah,
what I meant
was
was that I don't. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Karalee.
Kai, sorry, I was just going to say, look. The bottom line is you can't deny that, you know, the Labor governments, Queensland, Victoria, WA, they've caned Gladys Berejiklian in New South Wales. She's been very clear in what she said. They learnt from the Ruby Princess, and she said why they are the gold standard is their immaculate contact tracing allowed that state's economy to keep functioning. It's all well and good to say we want to eradicate COVID-19. That is never going to happen. There will always be COVID-19 around, whether it's mutates in a different form when the international borders are open. What it's about is the Labor premiers have played politics with this pandemic since word go. They've all had elections coming up and everything like that. But no one has given Berejiklian, because she's a liberal state government, they have just gone on and on. At least she has shown you need the economy to keep working. You need to keep that contact tracing. And that's what I said to you. Of course, I feel incredibly sorry for all these small businesses, but we've just seen in WA, one COVID case here, our border is up yet again. So, you know, I think, yes, health is important, but economics is what drives things. How many more billions is the federal government going to be printing money? Our future generations will never pay it off.
But is there a responsibility for the federal government, as Sarah was saying, maybe to show some, you know, a magnanimous attitude here? And perhaps, look, even from a political perspective, say, look, despite you just bagging out, anything that a Liberal political leader has said during this pandemic, we are going to help out the small businesses in your state because they're not responsible for what you did. However, if you do this again, then you're on your own.
130 billion. They've just done $130 billion for JobKeeper and JobSeeker. There are people getting money to run their own. Yeah.
Can I also say this, though, that you've got to remember that the federal government has provided a clawback provision for taxation, so that if a company makes a loss or a business makes a loss in this year, they will get the equivalent amount of money paid, reinstated to them from back taxes. So if they lose 100 grand this year and they've paid 100 grand in the last couple of years of tax, they'll get all that money back. Now, that's
Corey,
a pretty big concession.
Yeah, Corey, make no mistake. I agree that the federal government has already been incredibly generous. We're going into massive amounts of federal debt over this. But I guess I was still, look, you know, are you basically saying, look, basically these Queensland small businesses don't need more assistance than what they're currently getting from the federal government?
Here's the thing about not being a politician. I can be a purist. I can be a purist sitting back and telling them what to do. Right? They've got to think about the politics of it. That's the thing. And I think that's the point that you and Sarah are both making, isn't it?
Yeah, no, that's fair enough.
Yeah, Palaszczuk needs to recognise she needs to change the policies. I mean, it was her government that closed that. That's what happens to your small businesses in your state. We've seen it happen in Western Australia. They need to realise to stop playing politics with this pandemic and realise that, yes, every business needs help. How do you get business? You allow the travel between the borders. If there's a COVID outbreak, you close down that hotspot and you allow the rest of the state to keep working and keep moving.
Well, what do you make of this at home? Queensland asking for a handout. Let us know via our website, email and the Twitter account.